Sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes dressed in a navy suit, whispered behind locked screens, while your life unravels on an operating table. Wealthy entrepreneur abandoned his pregnant wife during surgery to dine with his mistress, Mila. But reality struck back in the cruelest way. On the most critical day of her life, the only sound in the room was the persistent beep of medical monitors, as Naomi Elise Carter lay still on the operating table. Her chestnut brown eyes stared blankly at the sterile fluorescent lights overhead, and with a shaky hand she reached for her phone one more time. No new messages. The screen showed 10 missed calls, 12 unread texts, and still nothing from her husband, Griffin. "Mrs. Carter, we need to move forward with the emergency C-section." Now came the firm voice of Dr. Emily Rowe, piercing through Naomi's days of worry. "Your baby's heart rate is falling." Naomi's throat tightened as she nodded, fighting to keep the tears from spilling. She had imagined this moment so differently. Griffin holding her hand, his stormy blue eyes filled with joy, both of them ready to greet their first child. But now she was alone, the fabric of her hospital gown damp with cold sweat, while somewhere across San Diego, her husband ignored every call. "He's probably just stuck in traffic," Naomi whispered, more to herself than to anyone else in the OR. Her voice quivered in that familiar way it did whenever she told herself a lie she wished were true. "He'll be here. Soon." Dr. Rowe's eyes locked with hers for a brief second, filled with an understanding Naomi wasn't ready to accept. The doctor's blonde hair was neatly tucked beneath her surgical cap, her hands moving with practiced calm as she finished the final checks. "Naomi," she said softly, using her first name for the first time since becoming her doctor, "we're going to take excellent care of you and your baby. I promise." As the anesthesiologist administered the spinal block, Naomi felt the icy numbness creep up her body. Her thoughts drifted to that morning, the last time she'd seen Griffin. He had been standing in front of their bedroom mirror, carefully slicking back his dark blonde hair, dressed sharply in one of his tailored navy suits. "Just a standard business dinner," he'd said, barely sparing a glance at her swollen belly. "Don't wait up." The scalpel made its first incision just as Naomi's phone buzzed. Her heart jumped, but it was only a push notification from a local news outlet. San Diego real estate mogul Griffin Carter spotted at luxury restaurant opening. Naomi's vision blurred as she focused on the thumbnail photo. There he was, Griffin, impeccable in his suit. Seated across the candlelit table was a glimmer of platinum blonde hair. The image blurred before Naomi's eyes. The operating room suddenly felt colder. Blood pressures rising, 115/80. "Now 120/85, a nurse called out. "Naomi, I need you to take deep breaths for me," Dr. Rowe said, her voice steady but gentle. "Focus on my voice. Your baby needs you to stay calm." Naomi struggled to steady her breathing, but her thoughts were in chaos. 6 years of marriage, 2 years of trying, endless promises, unraveling beneath unforgiving hospital lights. She remembered the soft lullaby she used to hum at night, hand on her belly, imagining Griffin beside her, marveling at their child. They had picked out names together, painted the nursery a shade of soft sage green. She had believed, fiercely, that they were ready, that he would show up, that he loved her. "I can see the baby," Dr. Rowe said, her hands working with swift precision. "Almost there." The next minutes passed in a haze, the sharp clink of surgical tools, hushed voices, then the sudden, beautiful cry of a newborn. "It's a boy," Dr. Rowe announced, her voice glowing with warmth. "A beautiful baby boy." But something was wrong. "NICU team, stand by," she called out, her tone shifting to sharp urgency. "He's showing signs of respiratory distress." Naomi caught only a fleeting glimpse. Her baby, tiny and impossibly pale, was quickly rushed to the other side of the room. Her vision darkened at the edges as the full weight of reality crushed her. A premature child struggling to breathe. An empty chair where Griffin should have been. The truth she'd tried to silence now screamed in her mind. She had never felt so small, so abandoned. Even the sterile walls seemed to close in on her, whispering that she was utterly, terrifyingly alone. The last thing Naomi saw before passing out was Dr. Rowe's face, those cool blue eyes now blazing with unshakable resolve. In that final moment, as her world faded to black, Naomi understood something painful yet clear. Sometimes the people who save you aren't the ones you trusted the longest. They're the ones who stay when everyone else walks away. Her baby's faint cry echoed in her ears as the darkness took her, and with it, a question that would echo in her soul. How do you rebuild a life at the very moment it was supposed to be complete? The rhythmic beeping of monitors brought Naomi back to consciousness. Her eyelids were heavy, her mouth dry as dust. Through the fog of medication, only one thought pierced through. "My baby," she whispered, barely audible. "Eli." Her hand moved instinctively to her belly. Only pain and bandages met her touch. "He's in the NICU," came Dr. Rowe's calm voice from nearby. "He's fighting hard, Naomi, just like his mother." Slowly, the room began to come into focus. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the partially closed blinds, casting long shadows across the quiet, private hospital suite. A room that should have been full of flowers, cheerful visitors, and balloons, now thick with antiseptic and a terrible, hollow absence. Naomi turned her head, hoping, expecting to see Griffin slumped in the visitor's chair, his suit creased from an overnight vigil. But the chair was empty, its leather surface pristine, untouched by worry or waiting. "Has my husband?" The words stuck in her throat. Dr. Rowe's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "We've been trying to reach Mr. Carter. His office says he's in an important meeting." Important meeting. The phrase echoed in Naomi's mind, side by side with the image from that news alert. Candlelight glinting off platinum blonde hair, Griffin's carefully composed smile. Her fingers clenched the thin hospital blanket until her knuckles turned white. "I need to see my baby," Naomi said, trying to sit up. The motion sent a sharp pain slicing through her abdomen, forcing a gasp. "Easy," Dr. Rowe said quickly, adjusting the bed's position. "Eli needs you strong. Let me get a wheelchair." The trip to the NICU felt like crossing an ocean. Every small bump in the floor sent flares of pain through Naomi's body, but she hardly noticed. Her world had narrowed to a single point, reaching her son. The NICU was like another planet. Dim, quiet, pulsing with the soft beeps and whirs of machines that tethered tiny lives to possibility. Dr. Rowe wheeled her to a particular incubator, where a fragile, almost translucent form lay surrounded by tubes and monitors. "He's so little," Naomi whispered, pressing her hand against the incubator's clear shield. Eli's chest lifted and fell in quick, shallow breaths. His skin still had a bluish hue, just over 4 pounds, a fighter in a world too large. "Would you like to touch him?" a gentle-faced nurse asked, already preparing to open a small port in the incubator. Skin-to-skin contact can work wonders. Naomi nodded, unable to speak. 1,000 words hovered behind her lips. Apologies, promises, lullabies she'd never had the chance to sing. But all that emerged was silence. The words stuck behind the knot in her throat. Everything she had wanted to say to him, to whisper into his ear the moment he was born, trapped inside the silence of grief and shock. Her hand slipped through the opening, tears blurring her vision. Eli's skin was like warm silk beneath her fingertips. His tiny hand, no bigger than her thumbnail, twitched faintly at her touch. "Hi, baby," she whispered, voice cracking. "Mommy's here. Mommy's not going anywhere." Then her phone buzzed. It came from Dr. Rowe's pocket. She had kept Naomi's phone safe during the operation. The doctor hesitated before handing it over. It wasn't Griffin. An email notification lit up the screen. "Payment declined. Hospital insurance claim." Naomi's hands began to tremble as she tapped into the message. Their family insurance plan, the one Griffin had promised would cover everything, had been canceled 3 weeks ago. "Is everything okay?" Dr. Rowe asked, noticing the color drain from Naomi's face. "Aye." Naomi's voice faded as more notifications flooded in. Joint credit cards, canceled. Shared checking account, drained. Their life together, now seemingly worth less than the price of a premature birth. She had believed in the solidity of their life, the way people believe in gravity, unseen but constant. And now, every promise she'd trusted in cracked open like thin ice beneath her feet. The room spun. Somewhere in the fog, she felt Dr. Rowe's firm grip on her shoulder, heard the nurse's voice, sharp with concern, calling for help. But Naomi's eyes stayed on Eli, his tiny hand still reaching into empty air. "What do I do?" she whispered. The words left her like a prayer. "What do I do now?" Dr. Rowe knelt beside the wheelchair, her normally composed demeanor softened. "Right now, you focus on breathing, focus on Eli." She paused, carefully choosing her next words. Everything else, we'll figure out together. As if on cue, the monitors tracking Eli's vitals responded with a quiet series of beeps. His oxygen levels crept upward, his fragile heart beating a little stronger. It was such a small shift, barely a whisper in the symphony of machines, but to Naomi, it was thunder. A sign from her son that he wasn't giving up, that maybe, just maybe, neither should she. In that moment, watching her son battle for every breath, Naomi felt something stir inside her. Something harder than hope, sharper than fear. Outside the NICU windows, the San Diego skyline was bathed in the golden shadows of sunset. Somewhere in that sprawling city, her husband was already building walls around his new life, convinced he had left her with nothing. But he was wrong. She had Eli. She had her strength. And, maybe, just maybe, she had an unexpected ally in the doctor who refused to look away. The question now was, would it be enough? Silence has a way of growing louder when you're alone. The apartment felt off. Everything was exactly as it had been 3 days ago. Griffin's expensive wool coat was still slung over the back of the designer armchair. Pregnancy books were neatly stacked on the coffee table. The nursery door remained closed, just like always. But now, every familiar item felt like evidence in a crime scene. Fragments of a life that had vanished in a single breath. Naomi stood in the entryway, still dressed in the soft, oversized clothing provided by the hospital. Her surgical incision throbbed beneath the bandages. Dr. Rowe had insisted on driving her home and now stood quietly nearby, medical bag in hand. "I can stay," the doctor offered, her voice stripped of its usual clinical distance. "Help you settle in." "I'm fine," Naomi replied automatically, words that rang hollow even to her own ears. She'd been saying them far too often lately, to the nurses, to the billing office, to her own reflection. The phrase had lost all meaning. Every time she said it, it felt more like a lie. Not just to others, but to herself. The lie of survival, the kind women repeat when they don't know if they'll make it through the next hour. The truth sat like shattered glass in her throat. She hadn't been fine since seeing the hospital invoices. $23,000 for the emergency C-section. $47,000 and climbing for NICU care. All of it. Now her burden. Thanks to the canceled insurance plan, a detail she discovered far too late. Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone, checking for what had to be the 100th time. Still nothing from Griffin. His social media had gone completely silent. His office continued to claim he was in meetings. The only trace of him? A single credit card charge. 3 nights ago. "Dinner for 2. At least sit down," Dr. Rowe said gently, guiding Naomi toward the living room couch. "You're still recovering from major surgery." Naomi eased into the cushions with a wince. Her eyes wandered to the framed photographs lining the wall, her and Griffin on their wedding day. His arm around her waist, both of them mid-laugh at some long-forgotten joke. Had he been planning this even then? Building the illusion of a perfect life, only to abandon it the moment things got too real? The thought felt like betrayal seeping in slow, venomous drops. How many smiles had been rehearsed? How many tender gestures just strategy? The sound of water running made her jump slightly. Dr. Rowe had slipped into the kitchen and returned moments later with a glass of water and 2 pills. "Your pain meds," she said, holding them out. "And before you say you're fine, you're not. Nobody would be." Naomi accepted the pills, too exhausted to maintain the lie any longer. "I keep thinking I'll wake up," she whispered, "that this is just a nightmare, and I'll open my eyes, and he'll be there, and Eli will be healthy." Her voice cracked. Dr. Rowe sat beside her, close enough to offer comfort, yet respectful enough to give space. The silence that followed felt different than the rest of the apartment's emptiness. It wasn't hollow or harsh, it was present, patient. Naomi leaned slightly into it, needing that quiet more than she realized. A space where no one expected her to be strong. "When's the last time you ate?" Dr. Rowe asked softly. Naomi tried to remember. Some hospital jello, maybe? Half a sandwich? The days had blurred into one long haze of NICU visits and financial dread. Her stomach tightened, not from hunger, but from the memory of sitting in that white hospital chair, watching monitors beep in Morse code she couldn't understand, wondering if she was already failing as a mother before she'd even been allowed to hold her son properly. A sudden knock at the door jolted her, pain lancing through her abdomen. She froze. Through the frosted glass, a male silhouette loomed. "Griffin?" No. The figure was wrong. Dr. Rowe was already on her feet, positioning herself between Naomi and the door. Are you expecting anyone? No, Naomi tried to sit up, but the movement sent another sharp ache through her body. The knock came again, firmer this time. Mrs. Carter? A male voice called out. James Morton from Pacific Coast Trust Bank. I need to speak with you regarding your property status. Property status. The words landed like a punch. What else had Griffin taken? What else could she still lose? I'll handle this, Dr. Rowe said, her voice shifting into the calm, commanding tone Naomi remembered from the OR. You're in no condition for visitors. Doctor's orders. Naomi sat back, watching with a strange detachment as Dr. Rowe cracked the door just enough to speak. Their conversation was hushed, but bits filtered through. Recent surgery, medical recovery, legal counsel, harassment laws. When the door finally closed, as the banker's footsteps faded down the hallway, Naomi realized she was shaking. Not from fear this time, but from something deeper. Rage, maybe, or grief, or both, twisted together until they formed something entirely new. He's going to take everything, she said aloud. The words tasted like ash. The apartment, the car, the savings I had before we were married. Her hand moved instinctively to press against the scar beneath her clothes. While our son is fighting for his life in the NICU. Dr. Rowe's expression sharpened. No, she said flatly. He's not. How can you be so sure? Because, Dr. Rowe said, pulling out her phone and scrolling through contacts, my sister is one of the best family law attorneys in Southern California, and she owes me a favor. Outside, thunder rolled across the San Diego skyline. A storm was coming, but for the first time since waking up alone in that operating room, Naomi didn't feel afraid. She felt something else rising, an ember in her chest that refused to die, that whispered, "You are not powerless. You are not alone." She felt ready to fight. Hope often arrives in strange wrappings, a passing smile, a nurse's nod, a quiet breath in a hospital hallway. During the NICU's morning shift change, the room hummed softly with quiet conversations and machines ticking steadily. Naomi sat in her usual spot beside Eli's incubator, her fingertips resting on the clear barrier. 1 week had passed since his birth. 7 days that had stretched into eternity. He's looking better today, Nurse Kimberly noted with a kind smile. She was a warm woman with dark hair streaked in silver, and she had taken a special interest in Eli's case. And look, another 2 ounces gained. 2 ounces, Naomi repeated, clinging to the words as though they were sacred. Every breath, every beat of his tiny heart, every extra gram was a victory in Eli's silent battle. She leaned closer, studying his tiny face, features still soft but becoming more defined. Griffin's nose, her chin. It should have been a moment of warmth, of connection. But instead, it twisted inside her, a reminder of everything Eli had inherited, even from someone who had abandoned them. The realization brought a sudden pang of emotion. Mrs. Carter? A new voice called from the entrance. Naomi turned to see a woman in a tailored charcoal suit, blonde hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail. Her presence was precise, controlled. Something in her icy blue eyes reminded Naomi of Dr. Rowe. I'm Madeline Rowe, the woman said as she approached with steady steps. Jessica's sister. Do you have a moment? Everything suddenly felt terrifyingly real. Naomi looked back at Eli, peaceful, surrounded by machines. Go, Nurse Kimberly said gently, placing a hand on Naomi's shoulder. I'll stay with him. He won't be alone. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty. Madeline ordered 2 coffees without asking, then led Naomi to a quiet corner far from the few lingering staff and families. She moved with the same focused grace as her sister, but where Dr. Rowe's strength was meant to heal, Madeline's was built to confront. Jessica told me everything, she said, sliding one of the cups across the table. But I need to hear it from you. Every detail. Every date, every dollar. Leave nothing out. Naomi wrapped her fingers around the warm coffee cup, grounding herself. Then the story poured out. The canceled insurance, the drained accounts, the property records she'd found showing their apartment had been transferred solely to Griffin's name months ago. He was planning this, she said, the words barely a whisper. The realization struck her fresh. While I was choosing paint for the nursery, he was erasing me. Madeline's pen moved with steady precision over her legal pad. Her expression never wavered. And the woman, the one from the restaurant, Eloise Garner, Naomi added, her voice tightening. The name tasted bitter. She's some kind of influencer, social media lifestyle brand. I found her profile after everything. Posts about luxury travel, exclusive parties. There are photos going back months. Griffin's in some of them, she added, in the background, always watching her. Good, Madeline replied, catching Naomi off guard. Digital footprint. We can use that. She set her pen down. Now let's talk strategy. The next 30 minutes were a rapid-fire crash course in legal combat. Terms like emergency spousal support, asset concealment, and prenuptial violations flew across the table like precision weapons. Madeline broke down the battle plan with surgical clarity, her tone sharp, measured. But the hospital bills, Naomi interrupted, her voice cracking. They're due next week. I can't. Already handled, Madeline said without blinking. Jessica took care of it. Naomi stared at her, stunned. What? My sister, Madeline said, her voice softening just slightly, has a trust fund she's never touched. Says money meant for Joy should be used for exactly that. She shuffled a few papers, not quite meeting Naomi's eyes. Consider it a loan if you have to, but it's done. The fluorescent lights above felt too harsh all of a sudden. Naomi pressed her palms to her face, her breath catching from the kindness she couldn't begin to comprehend. Why? She managed. Why are both of you helping me like this? Madeline was quiet for a long moment. Her gaze dropped to her coffee. 3 years ago, she said at last, Jessica lost a baby, 7th month. Her husband couldn't deal, walked out, left her to face it alone. Madeline looked up. Her eyes, cool and calculating before, had gone flinty. I handled his divorce too, she said. Let's just say he came to regret his decisions. Before Naomi could reply, her phone buzzed. A message from Nurse Kimberly. Eli's awake. Come quick. He's trying to grab my finger. The world realigned in an instant. Madeline understood without being told. She was already gathering her files. Go. I'll email you the documents. And Naomi? She paused. Men like Griffin, they think money is power. But there are things stronger than money. Naomi rushed back to the NICU, her heart pounding. Through the wall of the incubator, she watched in awe as Eli's tiny fingers curled around Nurse Kimberly's pinky. His grip was faint, but it was there, holding on, fighting, refusing to let go. In that instant, watching her son make his first conscious grasp at the world, Naomi finally understood what Madeline meant. Power didn't lie in accounts or deeds. Real power was in the bonds we build when everything around us threatens to break. It was in miniature fingers reaching out for life, and in the steady hands that reached back to hold us together. Eli's monitors beeped in quiet rhythm, like music, a lullaby of survival. The thing about rock bottom, it shows you exactly what you're made of. 2 weeks after Eli's birth, Naomi stood in what had once been her dream closet, methodically packing her life into cardboard boxes. The eviction notice had arrived that morning via overnight courier. Thick, expensive stationery, Griffin's signature sharp at the bottom. She had 72 hours to vacate what was once their home. Leave the designer items, Madeline instructed from the doorway, orchestrating the move with the precision of a general. Anything he bought you becomes part of the marital asset claim. Let it speak for itself. Naomi nodded, her hands pausing above a row of high-end dresses, pieces she'd worn to Griffin's industry events, each one worth more than a month of her nursing salary. Now, they felt like stage costumes from a life she no longer belonged to. Instead, she reached for her old, worn leather satchel, a gift from her father at nursing school graduation, the hand-knitted sweater from her mother. A small photo box filled with family memories, all from a time before Griffin. The real Naomi, buried beneath years of carefully performed perfection. Found something, Dr. Rowe called from the office down the hall. She stepped into the room holding a thick manila envelope, back of his filing cabinet. Naomi accepted it with trembling hands. Inside, statements, account ledgers, property transfers, offshore holdings, and photos. Dozens of them. Griffin and Eloise, cozy at private events, secluded dinners, romantic weekends, each timestamp a nail in the coffin. These were taken by a private investigator, Dr. Rowe noted, her voice tight with rage she was trying to contain. He was documenting the affair himself. Insurance, Madeline said grimly, flipping through the documents. He was building a narrative, planning ahead. Then a sharp smile formed on her lips, and he just handed us everything we need. A car door slammed outside. They all froze. Through the upstairs window, Naomi caught a flash of a familiar black Mercedes pulling into the driveway. Her breath hitched. "He's not supposed to be here," she whispered. "He said he was in New York until—" "Get your essential documents," Madeline cut in quickly. Madeline was already moving, pulling out her phone. "Jessica, help her. I'll handle this." Naomi moved on instinct, barely registering her surroundings. She grabbed her passport, Eli's birth certificate, the folder of medical records, her hands trembling so badly she could barely keep hold of them. Then, Dr. Rowe appeared beside her, calm and composed. "Breathe," she said, just like she had in the operating room. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. Focus on what needs to happen right now." Keys jangled in the front door. Griffin's voice floated up the stairs, smooth, controlled, as always. "Naomi, we need to talk." The sound of his voice, so familiar, so fake, sparked something inside her. Not fear, not pain, something harder, sharper, like steel being forged. "Take these to the car," she told Dr. Rowe, passing the documents into her hands. "I need 1 minute." "Naomi, please," Dr. Rowe began, but her voice was steady now. 1 minute. She walked to the master bathroom, the only room in the house that had ever felt truly hers. From beneath the sink, she pulled out a small blue box she'd hidden months ago, a Father's Day gift. Inside was a silver rattle engraved, "To Daddy, love, Eli." Footsteps climbed the stairs. Madeline's voice echoed down the hallway, crisp legal warnings fired off like weapons. Griffin's tone remained calm, smooth, dismissive. Naomi straightened, catching a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Her body, still healing, draped in simple jeans and a t-shirt, looked unfamiliar. But her eyes, they were different now, clearer, stronger. She stepped out of the bathroom just as Griffin appeared in the bedroom doorway. He looked exactly the same, perfectly tailored suit, perfectly styled hair, that same effortless smile. But now she could see the hollowness behind it. "Angel," he said, using the pet name that once melted her. "This has all gotten way out of hand. Let's just—" Naomi raised the blue box. "I was going to give this to you on Father's Day," she said quietly. "I had it all planned out. Breakfast in bed, something soft and sweet. I was going to tell you what an amazing father I knew you'd be." Something flickered in Griffin's eyes. Discomfort, maybe even guilt. But the smile held. "Our son," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "is in the NICU right now. He weighs 4 pounds, 3 ounces. His favorite nurse's name is Kimberly. He holds her finger when she changes his tubes." She placed the box on the dresser between them. "He's the strongest person I've ever met," she said, "and he's never going to need this." "I'm not finished." Steel rang in Naomi's voice. "You can keep the house, the wardrobe, the polished little life you built to trap me in, but Eli—" She met Griffin's gaze head-on. "Eli will only know love that's real." Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked away. Past Madeline's proud smile. Past Dr. Rowe's calm, steady presence. Down the stairs and out the door into the sharp, bright California sun. Behind her, she heard Griffin call her name, but there was no weight in it anymore. There was a time when that voice could unravel her, rewind her resolve with a single syllable. But now, it was just a name in the wind, no longer hers to answer. The sound didn't anchor her, didn't crack her resolve. It passed over her like a breeze, already forgotten. She had something stronger now. The truth of who she was, and the certainty of who she needed to be. For Eli, for herself, for the woman who was finally waking up, not from a nightmare, but from a golden lie, into something harder and brighter. Starting over takes more courage than staying ever did. The studio apartment was exactly what $850 a month bought in the less glossy parts of San Diego. A single room with a kitchenette, a bathroom smaller than her old walk-in closet, and a window that looked directly onto a brick wall. But as Naomi folded the last of her clothes into a second-hand dresser, she felt something she hadn't expected. Relief. Not just relief, but something closer to ownership. A fragile pride that came from choosing this place. Not because it was impressive, but because it was hers. Every chipped tile, every scuff on the floor told a story, not of failure but of survival, of starting again with open eyes. "It's not much," she said, almost shyly, as Dr. Rowe helped unfold the couch that would double as her bed. "It's yours," the doctor replied simply, "truly yours." The words hovered in the air, heavier than comfort, truer than sympathy. Everything in this tiny space belonged to Naomi alone now. The mismatched dishes from a thrift store, the medical textbooks from her nursing school days, the single photo of Eli taped to the mirror. No labels, no lies, no cages wrapped in gold. Her phone buzzed. A text from Madeline. Court date set for next month. Griffin's lawyer is coming in hot. Be ready. Before she could respond, another message came in. This one from the NICU. Her heart stopped until she saw the words. Eli pulled out his feeding tube again. Don't worry. We already replaced it. Someone's getting stronger. A laugh caught in her throat, part relief, part awe. His stubborn spirit had always been stronger than his size. She closed her eyes for a second, picturing him, fists balled, eyes blinking against the light. A reminder that she hadn't just survived. She had created something worth surviving for. I need to get back to the hospital, Naomi said, already grabbing her coat. The hospital was now a 40-minute bus ride, instead of a 10-minute drive in her repossessed Lexus. Another change, one of many. I'll drive you, Dr. Rowe offered. But Naomi shook her head. You've done enough, more than enough. She managed a small, grateful smile. Besides, I've got a job interview. After visiting hours, Dr. Rowe arched an eyebrow. Night shift at the community clinic? Naomi straightened the collar of her simple blouse. Clearance rack. Practical. It's not nursing, not yet. My license renewal's still pending, she said. But it's healthcare. It's close to Eli. She paused, swallowing down the emotion tightening her throat. It's honest work. The bus was packed with late-afternoon commuters when Naomi boarded. She found a spot near the back, one hand gripping the overhead rail as the city slipped past the windows. San Diego rolled by in scenes, snapshots of a life that no longer belonged to her. There were the boutiques where she used to shop, the restaurants where she'd played the role of the poised, corporate wife. Now, they looked like stills from a movie she'd once watched, familiar, but distant. The bus passed Lamon door, and her fingers tightened on the rail. Through the large front window, she caught a glimpse of candlelight, pristine linens, and a flash of platinum blonde hair. Eloise, seated at what used to be Griffin's favorite table. But the sight didn't shake her this time. Instead, Naomi felt something entirely unexpected. Pity. Eloise didn't know yet, didn't realize she was simply the next actress in Griffin's long-running performance. That every luxury, every handbag, every five-star evening came with invisible threads, each one another silk noose tightening around her autonomy. The NICU was peaceful when Naomi arrived, shadows stretching long across the floor. Eli lay in his incubator, his chest rising and falling with a growing steadiness. 5 pounds now, the nurses had said, climbing his way up, gram by gram. You pulled out your tube again, little warrior, Naomi whispered, slipping her hand through the port. Eli's tiny fingers curled around hers. Stronger than yesterday, teaching Mommy not to quit. He's getting feisty, Nurse Kimberly said, stepping in with his chart. That's good. Fighters go home sooner. Home. The word caught in Naomi's throat. Not the elegant nursery with the imported crib and painted clouds she once planned, but maybe something better. A place of real love. Not polished perfection. Speaking of home, Nurse Kimberly continued carefully, we had a visitor earlier, man in a suit, claimed to be the father. Naomi's spine straightened. I know, she said firmly. Madeline warned me he might try. The restraining orders posted at every nurse's station, Kimberly reassured her. No one gets near Eli without your say-so. No one. Naomi nodded, the gratitude swelling too deeply for words. Another lesson. Learning to trust. To lean on the growing fortress of friendship and protection being built around her and Eli. Her phone buzzed. A message from the clinic. Interview confirmed. See you at 7 p.m. Naomi looked down at her clothes. Nothing designer. No tailored blazers. No sharp heels. Just a woman with rolled sleeves, ready to work, to fight, to rebuild. I have to go now, baby, Naomi whispered to Eli. But I'll be back tonight. She pressed her fingers gently to the incubator wall. We're going to read Goodnight Moon again, and I'll tell you about brave knights who fight dragons. Her voice softened. And someday. She touched his cheek. Someday, I'll tell you how your strength helped me find mine. As she turned to leave, her reflection flashed in the NICU window. Tired eyes, unstyled hair, clearance rack clothes, but she stood taller than she ever had in designer heels and $1,000 dresses. Sometimes she was learning the most valuable things in life cost nothing, and sometimes the richest moments come after losing everything, except what really matters. The harsh fluorescent lights of the community clinic buzzed overhead as Naomi sifted through a pile of insurance forms. Her eyes burned, not from tears but from exhaustion. 3 weeks into her night shift, and she was discovering a new kind of fatigue. The bone-deep weariness only working mothers know. Her phone sat beside the clinic's ancient computer, displaying real-time updates from the NICU. Eli had gained another 2 ounces. His oxygen levels were stable, small victories. The kind that kept her going through the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. More coffee? Rosa, the night nurse, appeared with 2 steaming cups. At 62, Rosa had worked night shifts longer than Naomi had been alive. She'd taken Naomi under her wing from day one. No questions, no judgment. "Thanks," Naomi said, accepting the cup gratefully. "How's the patient in room 3? "Sleeping, finally. Poor girl walked 3 miles here with a fever of 103, Rosa said, shaking her head. "No insurance, no car, no options." She glanced sideways. "Reminds me of someone else I know." Naomi managed a soft smile. She'd shared bits of her story with Rosa during late-night meals in the break room. Just enough to be understood. Never enough to let the professional walls fall. The clinic's front door chimed. Both women looked up. A young mother stumbled in, holding a wailing infant against her chest. The baby's cries echoed through the empty waiting room. "My baby." The woman's voice cracked with panic. "She won't stop crying. I can't afford the ER." Naomi was already reaching for the intake forms, but something made her stop. The mother's hands were trembling, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. And behind her fear was something Naomi knew too well, the heavy, drowning silence of postpartum depression. "Rosa," Naomi said softly, "can you check the baby while I help Mom with the forms?" What happened next wasn't in any handbook. While Rosa examined the infant, an ear infection, easily treatable with the clinic's stock of antibiotics, Naomi sat beside the mother. She didn't just collect information, she listened. The young mother spoke in a trembling whisper, eyes still red from crying. Her father walked out. "There are nights I'm scared of my own thoughts. I thought I'd be stronger than this." Naomi heard herself respond before she even realized she was speaking. "Strength isn't about not breaking," she said gently. "It's about how you put yourself back together." Later, after the mother and baby had gone home, with antibiotics, formula samples, and a follow-up appointment, Rosa rested a hand on Naomi's shoulder. "You should be doing more than filing paperwork." "My nursing license hearing is next week," Naomi replied, turning back to the stack of insurance forms. "When they approve it." "If," she corrected herself. "When," Rosa said firmly. The rest of the shift rolled forward in its usual parade of midnight emergencies. Sprained wrists, night shift injuries, panic attacks that couldn't wait for sunrise. Naomi moved through them with growing confidence. Her instincts as a nurse had returned, slowly aligning with the understanding she now had of what it meant to live on the other side, without privilege, without safety nets. By the time she finally clocked out, the first light of dawn was coloring the San Diego sky. Her legs ached. Her surgical scar throbbed. Her mind was already calculating the bus times to the NICU. But first, a stop at the apartment. She needed to change, grab the documentation for that morning's court hearing. Just the thought made her stomach twist. Madeline had warned her it would be brutal. Griffin's legal team was going after everything, painting her as unstable, unfit, incapable of supporting a child. They'd submitted photos of her studio apartment, screenshots of her bus route, a copy of her pay stub and discount store receipts. Evidence, apparently. The morning bus was emptier than usual. Naomi took a window seat and watched the city come alive. Her phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Rowe. "Eli had a great night. Nurses say he might be ready for kangaroo care soon." "You've got this." Kangaroo care, skin-to-skin contact. She'd been dreaming of that moment since the day he was born. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. No tears. Not before court. No weakness. Her apartment came into view, and her heart skipped. Parked outside was a black Mercedes, and leaning against it, platinum blonde hair. Eloise. She looked different, smaller, more fragile than the woman from Instagram stories and luxury events. She was holding something in her hands, shifting her weight nervously, almost like she was trying to work up the courage to speak. Naomi's fingers hovered over Madeline's contact. The restraining order didn't cover Eloise, not technically, but she hesitated. The bus hissed to a stop. Naomi stood, smoothed her second-hand blazer, and took a breath. Sometimes strength wasn't about turning away. Sometimes it was about facing what and who scared you. Hearing truths you didn't want to hear, and just maybe recognizing that even the woman who helped blow up your life might be fighting battles no one else could see. She stepped off the bus into the rising light. One breath, one battle at a time. That's what mothers do. That's what survivors do. That's what warriors do. Up close, Eloise looked even smaller. Her designer outfit hung off her too thin frame. Her expression was unsteady. The confident smile from Eloise's online photos was nowhere to be seen. Instead, her flawlessly painted lips trembled. As Naomi approached, keys clenched in her fist like a shield. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the cracked San Diego sidewalk between them. "You shouldn't be here," Naomi said quietly. "I know," Eloise replied, her voice nothing like the silky laugh Naomi had heard from behind restaurant glass. "I know, but She held out a thick manila envelope. "You need to see these." Naomi didn't reach for it. Her mind raced. Legal threats? Fabricated evidence? Another one of Griffin's carefully staged plays? But there was something in Eloise's face. Something that made Naomi pause. A shadow in her green eyes that looked achingly familiar. The same kind of shadow Naomi had seen in her own mirror. "He didn't send me," Eloise added quickly, her words unraveling. "He doesn't know I'm here. He doesn't know I kept copies of everything." "Copies of what?" Naomi asked. "The prenup he made me sign last week. The offshore account transfers. The other women. Before me. After me. There's always someone else. Always another story." Naomi's knees weakened slightly. She leaned back until she felt the solid wall of her building, grounding her. "Why?" she asked, barely audible. "Why are you doing this?" Eloise's composure cracked. "Because yesterday," she said, "I found out I'm pregnant." She exhaled shakily. The words hovered between them, brittle and alive. Naomi could almost hear the sound of them splintering her world, the way her own had split weeks earlier. There was no drama in her voice now, only exhaustion, the kind that settles in your bones when all the pretending finally runs out. "And for the first time, I saw the whole story, from the other side, your side." The words landed between them like bricks, solid and weighty. Somewhere above, a window creaked open. The sounds of ordinary life drifted down, clinking dishes, a child's laughter. The world moved on, while theirs stood still. "He'll destroy you," Naomi said softly, not as a threat, but as a warning. "I know." Eloise's laugh was dry. "He's already started. That business dinner last night? New target, art gallery owner. I was supposed to be smiling for cameras at a charity event, playing the role." Her voice broke. "The doting fiancé." She held out the envelope again. "I can't. Not anymore. Not after." Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. Her touch was barely there. Not an embrace, just a reach. As if even acknowledgement might invite more pain than she could bear. Her fingertips barely brushed the fabric of her dress, as if touching the truth too firmly might shatter her resolve. Naomi understood that gesture too well. And for just a moment, she saw beneath the designer outfit, past the well-rehearsed poise, to the woman beneath, terrified, cornered. Another actress learning too late that the spotlight was really a snare. "Come inside," Naomi heard herself say. "You look like you could use some tea." The studio apartment somehow felt even smaller with two people inside, but Naomi moved through it with quiet efficiency, setting the electric kettle to boil, pulling out mismatched mugs, giving her hands something to do while her mind tried to process it all. Eloise hovered awkwardly near the fold-out couch, her eyes moving around the room. They landed on the NICU photo taped to the mirror. "Eli," she said softly. "That's his name, isn't it?" "Griffin. He never says it, just calls him the baby. When he's talking to his lawyers." "He's not Griffin's anymore," Naomi replied, surprised by the calm certainty in her own voice. "He's just mine now. Ours." The kettle clicked. Naomi poured hot water over the cheap tea bags, the simple routine grounding her nerves. When she turned back around, Eloise was on the couch, the envelope open across her lap. Documents spilled out, contracts, bank statements, photos, a roadmap of precision cruelty. "I thought I was special," Eloise murmured, tracing one photo with her fingertip. Herself and Griffin at some glittering fundraiser. "I thought I was different. From you. From the others. Such a stupid thing to think." "Not stupid," Naomi said, handing her a mug. Human. We see what we need to see until we don't anymore. Eloise accepted the mug with both hands, like someone holding on to the last warm thing in a cold world. Her shoulders sagged as if the weight of the truth had finally landed. They sat in silence for a moment, steam curling from their cups, sunlight sliding across the scuffed hardwood floor. Two women who had every reason to hate each other, united by the same man's curated destruction. "What will you do?" Naomi asked finally. Eloise's hand trembled as she lifted the mug. "I don't know. I can't do what he wants anymore. I can't be what he wants, but I don't know how to be anything else." "Yes, you do," Naomi said, already reaching for her phone, scrolling to a familiar contact. "You just forgot for a while. We all do sometimes." She pressed call. "Dr. Rowe? Are you still at the hospital? I need a favor, a big one." Eloise looked up, eyes wide with disbelief, a flicker of something close to hope catching in her throat. For the first time, she looked less like a pawn and more like someone remembering who they used to be. Later, as she watched Eloise follow Dr. Rowe down the hospital corridor for her first prenatal checkup, Naomi felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. Sometimes healing starts with helping someone else find their way out of the dark. Her phone buzzed. A text from Madeline. "Where are those documents?" "Court in 2 hours." Naomi looked down at the envelope in her hand, thick with evidence of Griffin's calculated cruelty. "On my way," she replied. Then Adeline, "I think we just changed the game." Outside, the morning had exploded into full sunshine, painting San Diego's brick buildings gold. Another day of battles lay ahead. The courtroom, the NICU, the night shift, small wins, setbacks. But for the first time, Naomi felt the shift under her feet. Not just surviving anymore. She was building something new, something real, something no amount of money or manipulation could touch. Some battles aren't won with weapons. They're won with truth. The courthouse hallway gleamed with marble and old money. The courthouse's high windows cast bars of golden autumn light across the marble floor. Naomi sat on a hard wooden bench, her second-hand navy suit pressed as crisply as she could manage. Across the hall, Griffin's legal team huddled near the double doors of the courtroom, their murmurs echoing against the stone walls. Tense, urgent. "Something's wrong," one muttered, checking his phone for the 100th time. "He should be here by now." Madeline stood beside Naomi, cool and composed in her charcoal suit, like a sentinel. "Griffin's never late," she observed. "Not for something this important." The heavy courthouse doors burst open, but instead of Griffin's polished arrival, it was Dr. Rowe. Still in her hospital scrubs, face calm and composed, her presence commanded the corridor. "Emily?" Madeline straightened, instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "Eli," Dr. Rowe said clearly, loud enough for every lawyer to hear. "He's asking for his mother. He's ready for his first real hold." The world stopped. Naomi's heart thundered. Weeks of sterile touch, gloves, ports, glass walls, and now, this. A longing so intense it almost unseated her. She hadn't realized how much she had held back, how much her body had waited, ached for this exact moment. "But the hearing," Naomi whispered, torn in two. "Your Honor?" Madeline called, spotting the judge making his way toward the courtroom. "May I approach?" The next moments blurred. Medical terminology, legal urgency, passionate defense of maternal rights. Dr. Rowe's steady voice describing the developmental necessity of kangaroo care. Madeline's razor-sharp articulation of what it meant for a mother to be present for her premature child. The judge nodded. 2 hours. We reconvene at noon. Miss Carter, go meet your son." Naomi barely remembered the elevator ride to the hospital, or the antiseptic smell of the NICU. Her mind was consumed with Eli. His tiny fingers, his stubborn breath, his slow, steady growth. The NICU doors slid open. Nurse Kimberly met her with a quiet smile, already pulling on the sterile gown. "Someone's been very patient," she said. They moved to the incubator. There he was, no longer blue, no longer fragile, pink perfect, 5 pounds and 8 ounces of fighting spirit. "Ready, Mom?" Kimberly asked. Naomi nodded, tears already building. With expert care, the nurse lifted Eli, shifting tubes, cradling wires, and then he was on her chest, skin to skin. His tiny head tucked beneath her chin, his warm body melting into hers, his heartbeat syncing with hers like music. "Hi, baby," Naomi whispered. "Hi, my brave boy." The warmth of his skin against hers unraveled something inside. Months of fear, betrayal, exhaustion, all rushing out in quiet sobs. Eli stirred, sighed, then stilled. "Peaceful?" The monitor beeped, heart rate steady, oxygen rising, just from being held, just from being home. Naomi? Dr. Rowe's voice interrupted, gentle but urgent. There's something else you need to see. Naomi looked up, still holding her son. Dr. Rowe held out her phone. A news headline glowed on the screen. Breaking. San Diego real estate mogul Griffin Carter arrested on multiple fraud charges. The evidence Eloise provided, Dr. Rowe explained quietly. Madeline hadn't just uncovered Griffin's personal betrayals. She'd found years of financial fraud, layers of investment scams. The offshore accounts weren't only hiding money from Naomi, they were shielding it from everyone. The realization crashed over Naomi like a tide. The canceled insurance, the vanishing accounts, the properties stripped from her name. Griffin hadn't just been planning to leave. He'd been preparing for collapse. Her phone buzzed. Madeline, hearing canceled. Judge granted emergency ruling in your favor. Full custody, support, everything. He can't fight it from jail. Eli stirred softly against her chest, his tiny fist gripping her gown. Naomi looked down, really looked, and saw not just her baby boy, but her future, one built on truth. Not lies, on love, not control. Dr. Rowe, she said quietly, not taking her eyes from Eli, can you call the clinic for me? Tell them I'll be there tonight? You don't have to, Emily replied gently. I want to. Naomi smiled, her heart steady as Eli's breaths. There are other mothers walking through clinic doors at midnight with feverish babies and terrified hearts. They need someone who understands, someone who can show them how to be strong. Through the NICU window, the San Diego skyline burned gold in the autumn light. Somewhere out there, Griffin Carter was facing the truth. His empire, crumbling. Somewhere, Eloise was starting her own climb out of the wreckage. But here, in this quiet, humming room, Naomi held everything that mattered. Everything that was real. You did it, little warrior, she whispered, kissing the crown of Eli's downy head. You showed me how to fight, how to win. She held him tighter. Now, let's show the world how to live. Home isn't a place. It's the moment you finally recognize yourself in the mirror. The day Eli was released from the NICU dawned crisp and clear. Autumn painted San Diego's streets in gold and copper. Naomi stood in her tiny studio apartment, watching the sunrise through her narrow window. Final touches in place. The fold-out couch was pushed aside, making room for a second-hand crib. One Dr. Rowe had helped her find. It was simple, sturdy, and more beautiful than any custom nursery furniture, because it was built on honest work and real love. Ready for the big inspection? Dr. Rowe called from the doorway, carrying a box of baby supplies donated by the hospital staff. Diapers, formula, hand-me-downs from their own children. Gifts that didn't come from status, but from heart. Almost, Naomi said, smoothing the last corner of the crib sheet, her hands steady. Her hands no longer trembled where they once had. 3 months of night shifts at the clinic had taught Naomi a new kind of strength. Not the kind you perform, but the kind you earn. From late-night emergencies, quiet victories, and helping others rise when the world had knocked them down. Strength that wasn't built overnight, but carved slowly from fatigue, fear, and the soft victories of simply showing up. Her phone chimed. A message from Madeline. Final paperwork filed. House sold. Debt settled. Accounts unfrozen. You're officially free. Free. The word felt strange, like trying on shoes that almost fit. Unfamiliar after years of walking in golden chains. Freedom sounded beautiful, but carried its own kind of silence. The silence that follows when the fight you've been defined by finally ends. News of Griffin's downfall had rocked San Diego's elite circles. Decades of financial deception exposed. His empire of marble and lies reduced to ashes. The man who once brokered million-dollar deals now sat in a federal holding cell, his designer suits traded for prison orange. But Naomi had stopped following the headlines. Her world had shifted to more important things, like Eli's first full bottle. Her reinstated nursing license hanging proudly on her wall. The family of midnight warriors at the clinic who brewed coffee stronger than their exhaustion and shared strength when it mattered most. Miss Carter? Nurse Kimberly appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. The home health evaluation's ready to begin. The next hour blurred. Safety latches, window locks, emergency contacts. Each checkmark brought her closer to the moment she'd dreamed of since that terrifying night in the OR. Her heart beat faster with each nod of approval, the weight of each signed form lifting months of dread from her shoulders. This wasn't just an inspection. It was the final step toward reclaiming her life. "One more thing," Nurse Kimberly said, her professional tone softening. "You know, you don't have to do this alone. There are programs, support groups." "I'm not alone," Naomi said, smiling as she glanced at the card on her kitchen counter. An invitation to Sunday dinner at Rosa's. Next to it, a shift coverage schedule from her clinic family, each name signed in colored ink, volunteering hours so she could take maternity leave, and pinned to the bulletin board, a photo of her with Dr. Rowe and Eloise, taken at last week's prenatal appointment. 3 women, once strangers, now sisters in survival. Each frame in her home told a story, not of loss, but of rebuild. Not of who she was before, but who she had become. Stronger, wiser, surrounded by people who chose her, not despite her scars, but because of them. The apartment door creaked open. Rosa entered, carrying Eli in his car seat, 6 pounds and 12 ounces of Miracle wrapped in a tiny hand-knitted sweater. "Someone's ready to come home," Rosa announced, eyes twinkling. "Put on quite the show at his last checkup. Strong lungs on this one." Naomi reached for her son, cradled him close. He smelled like baby powder and promise. Eli's honey-colored eyes, so much like Naomi's, were wide, alert. No more wires, no more machines, just her son. Finally free. Finally home. "Welcome home, warrior," she whispered into his soft hair. Dr. Rose stepped forward, something clutched in her hands. "The nurses wanted you to have this," she said. She held out a simple silver frame. Inside, a photo. Naomi unconscious in the OR. Rowe cradling a blue, fragile Eli in her arms, her face steeled with resolve. Below the image, etched in delicate script, "The moment strength was born." Tears stung Naomi's eyes, but not the kind born from heartbreak. These were the kind born from being seen, from being known, from being valued, exactly as she was. "I have something too," Rosa said softly, pulling a small package from her bag. Inside, a well-loved children's book. The Little Engine That Could. "For the nights ahead," Rosa said gently, "so he never forgets where he came from and what he's made of." Naomi looked around her tiny studio. Second-hand crib, donated supplies, handmade blankets, no chandeliers, no designer brands, no curated images. Instead, night shift calendars and bus passes, nursing textbooks and handwritten notes taped to the fridge. Cards from clinic patients who had become like family. Love in every corner. Love that had been tested, cracked, and rebuilt. Stronger than before. Eli cooed softly, his tiny fist wrapping around Naomi's finger with surprising strength. Outside, San Diego's morning light bathed their small world in golden promise. "What do you think, little warrior?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Ready to show the world what real strength looks like?" Eli answered with a smile. His first real one. Bright as a sunrise after the longest night. And in that smile, Naomi saw everything. The past, turned into wisdom. The present, rooted in purpose. The future, theirs to write, one honest page at a time, 1 year later. The community clinic's waiting room looked different in the morning light. Gone were the midnight panics. Now sunlight filtered in, catching on children's crayon drawings taped to the walls. A small corner overflowed with worn toys and picture books. And on one newly painted wall, a sign read, "Night Shift Mothers Support Group, Thursdays, 2 a.m." Naomi adjusted the badge on her scrubs. Nurse Carter, no longer a receptionist, now fully reinstated, in title and in truth. Now working the overnight shift as an RN, Naomi chose to bring Eli with her whenever she could. At 14 months old, her sturdy little boy, with the same determined gleam in his honey eyes, sat happily playing at her feet while she wrapped up notes from her shift. "Look who's here for breakfast," Rosa called out cheerfully from the entrance, ushering in the regulars. Dr. Rowe, balancing coffees. Eloise, her baby girl, sleeping in a sling. And several mothers Naomi had once helped through long nights of fear and healing. It had become their tradition. Post-shift breakfasts while the children played, a sanctuary built from the ashes of broken beginnings. They called themselves the Nightlight Sisters, a joke turned lifeline. "Ready for your speech tonight?" Dr. Rowe asked, handing her a coffee. Naomi nodded, fingers brushing the acceptance letter in her pocket. San Diego University's nursing school had offered her a part-time teaching position. Her first lecture? Beyond Survival, Rebuilding Through Service. "I think so," Naomi said, watching Eli stack blocks with fierce intent. "I'm going to talk about real strength. The kind that helps lift others even when you're barely standing yourself. Like the kind that saved me, Eloise added softly. Her transformation from socialite to advocate had been profound. She now ran a growing network supporting women escaping abusive relationships, using her platform for healing, not status. Naomi smiled, remembering the countless nights in that very clinic. Women holding each other's babies while filling out job applications, nurses teaching budgeting between emergencies, Dr. Rowe finding ways to make treatment possible no matter the price tag. Sunlight caught the edge of Naomi's necklace, a simple silver chain engraved with her mantra, "Strength grows in the spaces where you pour love." Eli toddled over, grabbing her leg, his voice full of curiosity. "Mama work?" "Yes, baby," she said, lifting him into her arms. "Mama works to help other mamas be strong, just like you helped me." Outside, San Diego stirred awake. Somewhere across the city, Griffin sat in a prison cell, his empire of deceit reduced to rubble. But in the ruins, something else had taken root. A garden of second chances, watered by tears and tended by resilient women who refused to fall alone. Naomi looked around at her chosen family. Rosa's warm smile, Dr. Rowe's quiet steadiness, Eloise's hard-won peace. These were the people she would talk about tonight. This was the story she would tell her students. That sometimes betrayal leads you to your true calling. That strength is not about never breaking, but about what you build from the broken pieces. That power isn't in property deeds or penthouses, but in midnight coffees shared in understanding. That love should never trap, it should set you free. And that every woman carries within her the power to rewrite her story, one brave choice at a time. Eli patted her cheek, pulling her back. "Mama?" "Yes, my little warrior," Naomi whispered, pressing her forehead to his. "Let me tell you the best story I know, about a baby boy who taught his mama how to be strong, and about the angels who helped them find their way home." Outside, dawn painted the sky in colors of renewal. Inside, in a room filled with laughter and light, they were already home. Hey there, dear friends. If you're still with me right now, I know something in this story has touched your heart in a unique way. And now, let's take a moment together to reflect, not from a place of right or wrong, but from the space of quiet truth. This story isn't just about betrayal or pain, it's about rediscovery. About how the worst moments in life can sometimes crack us open, just wide enough for light to get in. Naomi's journey reminds us that strength doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers, one more step, one more breath. In the spirit of Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Naomi embodies this. She loses nearly everything, her home, her marriage, her sense of self, but instead of crumbling, she chooses to rebuild, not with vengeance, but with purpose. That choice? It's available to all of us. Life will not always be kind. People may fail us, but within that brokenness, there is space to redefine who we are. Naomi didn't just survive, she transformed. Her pain became empathy, her fall became foundation, and her child, once a symbol of loss, became her light forward. So if today feels heavy, if you're carrying your own story of heartbreak or starting over or silent resilience, let this be your reminder. You are not alone, and you are more powerful than you think. And if this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Not for me, but so that more people can find a flicker of light when their nights feel longest. Until next time, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply keep going.